I think I've rugged enough for a lifetime. hopefully hopefully I'm all good now. Norbert, nice to meet you, my friend. This is the first time we're actually talking in person. Good to have you join us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I know it's a last minute invite, but I'm super excited to be part of the series to kick things off.
Yeah, absolutely. No, likewise here. So, just to give you guys kind of like an overview of what the goal is of this Web3 or Web B Academy is we basically, the entire ethos of Bitcoin OS is to unify, right? That's pretty much what we're doing is unifying this fragmented multi-chain kind of ecosystem that we have. So, our goal with that on the community side of things as well is to just unify us all as community-based individuals, right? And so with that, we wanted to start this empowerment series, this self-empowerment series, where we all kind of, share knowledge, share information, share tips, share mistakes, share advice, just have general conversations regarding, all things Bitcoin, all things crypto, all things Web3, right? These types of conversations are really empowering for us. So that's kind of what we wanted to harness with these spaces. So, let me just bring up David here. David is our lead DevRel. But yeah, guys, if you could just do us all a favor and just retweet the space so that we could just get a bigger outreach, that would be so much appreciated on our end. And Andrew, do you mind recording the space because I think it's still not being recorded before we begin.
Sure, just give me a second.
Well, good to see everybody here. We have Real Shit Trader. We love shit trading. Art Mafia, Ridwan, Jackal Girl, Fast as Thunder, Young Linto, David, Jerry, Ao. We got Crip, Elisa, Very Bullish. Likewise, my friend. G6 Real, nice to see you. Ninja, we have the Mass joining us here. Nubit team. Nubit is our partner, by the way, just to let you guys know. We love the Nubit team. And then we have the Traveler here, who's one of my good friends. And then Jason, good to see you, my friend, from the African community. The African community has been so fantastic. We've absolutely loved working with you guys. You have been such powerful advocates for us, and your efforts are so, so appreciated, my friends. And then we have David, who's our lead DevRel. I'm Alien, your friendly neighborhood community alien. And then we have Andrew, the Bard of Bitcoin OS. And then we have Norbert joining us too. Norbert, did you want to introduce yourself before we begin?
Yeah, absolutely. I can do a short introduction. So yeah, my name is Norbert. I'm pretty much with Nubit right now. Entered the space in 2019, 2020-ish, initially with ETH NFTs and all sort of EVM, DeFi, all sort of fun kind of experience in a DeFi before I transitioned to Bitcoin at the end of 2023 with Ordinals Boom and pretty much in here in the ecosystem. Kind of a little fun fact I like to share. Prior entering the space, I was an athlete. I had a chance to go to the Olympics and just trying to carry that kind of hard work ethic and all the fun stuff into the space because I think so many things are happening. You gotta be fast paced, you gotta learn. And yeah, just super excited to kind of contribute to Nubit now.
What sport?
Wow, that's amazing.
I was a swimmer.
Okay. I've been trying to qualify for the Paralympics, but I'm just not fat enough yet. So
David.
I'm sorry. I watch that stuff. It's fun. Just joking.
Oh my God, David. Love it. That's why you're
Sorry.
here, man. That's why you're
Sorry.
here. We
It's
need
to
your
be in my
humor.
defense. It's 1 a.m. I've had back-to-back calls for like 5 hours, 6 hours. I just had to crack a joke. It's been
Nah,
too long.
that was amazing. Thank you for blessing us with that. Truly. So I guess let's get started. We're having trouble recording this space. That's okay. Shit happens. But all right, guys. So basically, what we're going to be talking about today is we're just going to be discussing all things Bitcoin. The new narrative basically in this entire crypto financial world is basically to complement Bitcoin, right? A lot of bullish things have happened with Bitcoin in 2024. It was basically a game-changing year for Bitcoin, right? The SEC approved spot Bitcoin ETFs. And for those of you that don't know what an ETF is, it's an exchange traded fund. It's basically a product that's traded on stock exchanges. It's kind of like an individual stock, but with ETFs, they're typically a collection of assets such as stocks, bonds, commodities, or other securities, right? So this was a historical milestone in Bitcoin's integration into traditional financial markets. And I believe at the moment, Bitcoin ETFs represent about 3.5% of all US flows. So this is extremely bullish, right? The merge between both traditional and decentralized financial markets. We obviously need that to be taking place. Not everybody's used to kind of decentralized trading, right? And then we have major institutional players who bought roughly 859K Bitcoin last year, which was roughly about 4.3% of Bitcoin's total supply. Obviously, MicroStrategy was a key player here. I think at the moment they own about 2.3% of the total supply, which is absolutely insane. And there's obviously other institutions that are kind of playing catch up to this, right? Game theory is very much a thing at the moment, and Bitcoin is becoming beyond just this asset base, right? Holding Bitcoin will essentially position you as a key leader in the economic and financial landscape, right? And a lot of institutions are picking up on this. A lot of countries are picking up on this. And we've only really seen the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this. What happened? What else happened last year? We had Donald Trump proposed a strategic Bitcoin reserve. The Russian finance minister authorized the use of Bitcoin and other digital currencies in international payments. That was massive. Putin said Bitcoin is a better alternative to foreign currency reserves. Bitcoin obviously broke 100K, which was an incredible milestone for us all. And again, extremely validating that Bitcoin and crypto isn't just this massive black swan event that's taking place, right? So Bitcoin is basically the winning team here and something that we all kind of want to begin plugging into our personal lives. So that's kind of the conversations that we wanted to host today is how can we start, contributing to this movement, right? Because there's no doubt that Bitcoin is paving the way for this decentralized financial future. So what can we do in our personal lives to kind of complement that and kind of pave the way for that? So, I'll obviously talk your guys' ears off. So I do want to give everybody a chance to kind of participate, and that goes for everybody here. Of course, if you have something you want to contribute, something that you want to say, something that you want to share, please raise your hand up, and we'll bring you up to speak. But with that, my co-hosts, our friendly speakers here, if you guys wanted to contribute anything to that before we kind of begin the conversations.
Sure, I can say something about all of the notes that you just made. So, first of all, before I begin speaking, I'd like to formally introduce myself, guys. I am officially speaking the content manager for BTCOS. Unofficially speaking, as Aliens introduced me, I am the Bard of Boss. I manage the socials for Boss, particularly the Twitter, and I manage a lot of the blog writing for the site. So, with that being said, a lot of the notes that you just made, Aliens, have contributed to an observation of mine of Bitcoin over the past few years and the impact that it has, not only professionally, but the impact it has on people's personal and financial lives, which is if there's a way that you can improve your life that applies universally to people, number one is hard work. And I'm I'm hesitant to say this, but number two, I dare say, is adopting Bitcoin, which is a weird thing and it's a new thing, but it's such a consistent pattern. And it's the success that it brings to people is so radical that it may as well just be ingrained as like a rule of life. And just over the past year, we've seen many pieces of evidence for this, many of which you just brought up. So one of these pieces of evidence is if you look at the most successful stock market company, I believe over the past year, definitely, but potentially over the past 4 years since 2020, which company was it? It was MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy outperformed every single company in the S&P 500 over that period of time. And what did they do? Did they run a very convoluted, complicated business? Not really. What they did was they leverage bought Bitcoin in a very clever way that took advantage of the fact that they're a public company. And just off of that, they're the most successful company on the stock market. It was a very simple strategy and it worked. Another example, you have this giant of traditional finance, BlackRock, which decided to almost adopt its enemy by delving into Bitcoin, launching an ETF for this decentralized financial product, which in some ways competes with itself. But despite that, after launching a Bitcoin ETF alongside roughly 8 or 9 other competitors that launched the exact same product, BlackRock had the most successful ETF launch of all time. BlackRock reached $50 billion AUM on their Bitcoin ETF within under 300 days. The second fastest ETF to reach that number took 4 years. I believe over 4 years, according to Bloomberg. So an absolutely radical success. They completely blew everybody out of the water, and they surpassed even their own expectations. And then finally, the most recent example would be at the political level. Donald Trump and the Republican Party had one of their biggest victories in over 20 years. Like I'm pretty sure it was, the stat was that they won the popular vote for the first time in 20 years over the Democratic Party, and they dominated every swing state in an election that the experts were telling you was going to be close, and it wasn't close. And I can't help but feel that that has at least a little bit of something to do with the fact that they adopted Bitcoin, they welcomed miners, they welcomed Bitcoin node runners and the freedom to use your own money over the Democrats who completely opposed all of these freedom-centric principles and shafted us at every conceivable turn. And so Trump ended up winning big. And so those are 3 just major examples at like a macro corporate political level of you plug into Bitcoin and you win. And what's fascinating about this example is that it even applies at the personal level. Like, as somebody who's been involved with Bitcoin for several years, who's been working in the space now for almost a full cycle, roughly 3.5 years, I've definitely noticed a pattern of people who adopt Bitcoin for obvious reason and who stick to it would end up financially better off because, well, the price has been going up so fast. But also, they end up a lot more hopeful for their own personal futures. They can see a way out and the world makes a lot more sense to them. Whereas I've noticed a lot of my own peers who are younger, who are looking, they're trying to figure out how they're going to afford a home one day, trying to build up some savings. And they're almost like hopeless. They're kind of black-pilled on this subject, and they don't really like to think about it a whole lot because they don't have a clear vision for it. And Bitcoin, for the people who are willing to listen, tends to give people that vision. And so the pattern has become starkly clear to me over the past 4 years. If you want to win, a very clear strategy is to adopt a Bitcoin, which is sound money, which is healthy money, and which makes the world make sense. So with that, I'd like to give it back to Aliens if she has any comments on that.
Yeah, no, those are honestly, obviously very, very, very bullish things, right? Like, we're all experiencing personal sovereignty, financial freedom through this space. And the more people that we can share this information with, and this knowledge with, it's kind of the better for us all as a community, right? So there's obviously no doubt that Bitcoin is paving the way for this decentralized financial future, and obviously so much more for us. Bitcoin is becoming more than just an asset. It's a movement. It's technology. It's a symbol of financial independence, a symbol of personal sovereignty. It changes the way we think about the future, the way we think about money, the way we think about ownership, trust, technology, right? So we should all be asking ourselves, how can we kind of contribute to the acceleration of this? How can we contribute to empowering individuals, our friends, our family, our community with personal sovereignty? And how can we as a community shift towards this, towards truth and freedom, right? So there's a couple ways that we can kind of go about this, which is one, the simple route: join the Bitcoin movement, stay updated with all things related to Bitcoin, right? All the news, the updates, the different projects in the space that are working with Bitcoin, for example, Bitcoin OS, not trying to shill right now. Stay updated with just like institutions and governments buying Bitcoin or countries or cities proposing a strategic Bitcoin reserve, right? All this information is very empowering. And for those of you that don't know what a strategic Bitcoin reserve too is, because this will come up a lot, it's typically when an entity or a government, a corporation or institution chooses to allocate a portion of their assets to hold Bitcoin as a long-term financial strategy, right? So like Trump, for example, endorsed a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Pennsylvania is establishing their own. For those of you that don't know, Pennsylvania is a state in the United States. The city of Vancouver in Canada also proposed one. And now that the Justin Trudeau, for example, the prime minister, he's stepping down, Pierre Poilievre, who's likely to replace him, more than likely might actually also endorse a strategic Bitcoin reserve or establish one because he's also a very like well-known kind of like Bitcoin advocate. So obviously knowing all this information is extremely empowering. You can make content around Bitcoin. This could be posts on X, this could be threads, you can make video content on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, you could host spaces around Bitcoin. Obviously, fostering conversations regarding this space is super important. Educating regarding this space is super important. Spread the word about Bitcoin to your friends and family. Educate regarding Bitcoin whenever you can. It doesn't even have to be about Bitcoin, right? We don't need to just strictly focus on that. It could be crypto, it could be Web3, right? This entire space is just empowering within itself. And then from there, we can obviously go a little deeper. You can go full-time crypto, right? Go full-time Bitcoin. You can start working in this space and start contributing to the growth of this space, to the innovation, to the tech, to community building, to sharing knowledge. You could start saving in Bitcoin, which will also benefit you and anybody else who's in your life, right? You could start taking payments in Bitcoin as well, which again, same kind of concept here is we're all kind of moving towards paving the way for this decentralized financial future. So these are, I guess, just some of my ideas that I have on how we can kind of like as a community shift towards that. But I would love to hear from the rest of the speakers because, like I said, I don't stop talking. So.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in on that. I have so much to say about a bunch of different points of what you just said, but I'm going to zoom in on one. So you're talking about Bitcoin potentially being adopted in Canada. Maybe there's going to be a strategic Bitcoin reserve. A Canadian PM, very likely to be the next PM, very bullish on Bitcoin. All of this is true. But as somebody who is Canadian and who's kind of zoomed in a little bit on this topic, I want to provide a little bit more insight to that. So one interesting fact about Vancouver, now the city of Vancouver, now investigating, inspecting, potentially launching their own Bitcoin reserve, is that they were inspired by people's personal stories. So when the mayor of Vancouver initially proposed that they do this, as the council and the city of Vancouver initially wanted to vote on this, the people that they brought in to speak about their own about potentially launching this thing were people just within the city of Vancouver, regular people who had their own small businesses whose personal lives had been changed by adopting Bitcoin. So one guy was like a Canadian Bitcoin podcast host, and then he went up and he spoke about how Bitcoin personally changed his life and it made him hopeful that he'd be able to afford a home in Vancouver where housing is very expensive. Another guy was a coffee shop owner who said he was able to like basically revive his business from the brink of bankruptcy thanks to Bitcoin and saving Bitcoin, and they pay their employees in Bitcoin. Sharing just these little micro stories has now spread up to the government level where the city of Vancouver might potentially establish a Bitcoin reserve. And you can see how that might expand out, right? Because if now a major city in Canada is going to adopt this, you combine that with the fact that you've got a PM who is thinking, or as at least we know is very bullish on Bitcoin and understands how Bitcoin is sound money and the flaws of inflation and the financial system in Canada. What if he looks at the smaller example of what's going on in Vancouver and decides maybe we should do this at the national level? So this is something I think about in the context of how your little actions to adopt Bitcoin and then sharing your experience with the world can really kick off something really, really big. I can see it happening right now, and I have a feeling it's going to happen because personally, I have had the privilege of getting a meet Pierre Poilievre, the very likely next PM of Canada. And I asked him some questions about Bitcoin, and he really knows his stuff. Like he was ready for some on the spot, very granular, particular questions about a potential like capital gains tax on Bitcoin. And I asked him a little bit about mining once. This was in a journalistic capacity a few years ago, and he's serious about this. And so once he actually has the reins of power and he can do what he prefers to do, and as countries around the world, including our southern neighbors, uh, consider establishing a Bitcoin reserve, I don't see why Canada wouldn't also follow suit. Like this is becoming a really big thing, and it started as something so small. I'll leave that to you, Alien.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's incredible. And obviously, if that takes place on a national level, like what does that mean for the rest of the world, right? Like I had mentioned game theory earlier, it's like Bitcoin is becoming more than just this asset base. It's like, there's going to be this race to who can adopt as much Bitcoin as possible because that's going to position you as a key leader in global order, right? It's more than just it's going to be about status, it's going to be about power. It's beyond just finance, right? So that's very interesting to see. And obviously, we're seeing this already being picked up by institutions. MicroStrategy has been ahead of the game for MicroStrategy is living in like the year like 2100, like they're like way ahead of the game. So obviously, and they're also trying to get other institutions to kind of like pick up and follow the same suit. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see this in the next year, like kind of the doors that get opened up for us, because 2024 was kind of insane. Like everything that was happening was so bullish, guys. It almost makes you think like, are we are we expecting like a black swan event to hit anytime soon? Because things are just way too bullish right now. So yeah, but yeah, I guess like Norbert, if you had anything to contribute regarding that, I'm not sure where you live, but I don't know if yeah, basically if you want to chime in on that, my friend.
Yeah, I think so. I live in Florida, which is pretty good kind of environment for crypto, fortunately. Being pretty much like crypto friendly from the very beginning. I think one really interesting part that I think we're kind of missing is how El Salvador has been so early to this as well, as a country adopting Bitcoin from payment and how it actually turned the country around. And I think them, MicroStrategy, and for this year with ETF, as well as how Trump has kind of shed more light in regards to what Bitcoin is for. And I think with that, the more mainstream media picked it up. And I think a really easy way kind of to onboard the normies with that regard, as I think so many of my friends or circle around me that are working in Web2 are their first impression only being that, oh, it's a scam. Because everyone is just thinking about the previous cycle with NFTs, Ethereum, everything has been just a massive gains and then just went to zero real fast. But I think Bitcoin definitely takes up a different role in this whole financial system, where I think looking at just where it came from, what it actually characterizes, in my opinion, as a global finance. And again, looking at the early movers, I think with any sort of institution adoption, it's just only going to push the price, and even like country adoption going to push the price even more. But I think there's been enough examples that we can use. I think being a thought leader as of like a country adopting it, being MicroStrategy adopting it, Trump is now talking about it, and countries gonna follow regardless. So I think being the first mover always gets the advantage. But even then, I feel like more people now kind of feeling worried that oh, I cannot own a whole Bitcoin. And I think my argument with that like you don't have to own a whole one thing. Like 100K Bitcoin price or like 95, wherever that might be now, is kind of a big mental challenge for people to invest into it. But even a small piece and just like keep continue buying it, just like MicroStrategy has been doing and countries been doing, or El Salvador and people been doing, is a huge step towards actual financial independence. So I think kind of giving them the, to not doubt their decision and just continue essentially just accumulating as much as they can is a really, really good way to see how they can participate in this upcoming wave. Because regardless, it's not going to go anywhere. And I think people cannot question that anymore. And the more mainstream media and the more countries going to pick it up, I think the bigger it's going to be. So you don't want to be the person who doesn't own a single piece, doesn't own a single Satoshi. Otherwise, it's going to be challenging for you.
Norbert, I want to pick up on a few points of what you just said and pitch a question back to you as well as all of the other speakers. And that question is, what has been your experience of trying to orange pill your friends and or your normie family around you? And how has that changed over time, if at all? Because I am noticing a shift, and Norbert kind of hinted towards this, which is in the past, I would try to convince people on Bitcoin. They'd be like, "Oh, I don't know, seems kind of fishy, seems kind of scammy. I don't really want to touch it." And now they're hesitant. Some of them are hesitant to buy Bitcoin, but for a completely different reason. Not because it's illegitimate, but because they feel it's too late and they can't really buy enough, and it's gone up enough. And now they feel like they're missing out, and they're almost desperate to know that they might have a chance to get to buy in again. But I think that's progress. I think at least they want to buy in, and then I can get into the conversation of, well, you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin, and you can buy just a little piece, and there's still so much room to grow. And I have noticed that my own peers, and a part of it's just like the fact that it's a bull market, but um, just the other component of the fact that governments are now getting on board and major institutions. I find people who didn't listen to me and to some of my other peers who just have been like Bitcoin maxis for several years, uh, they're finally starting to clue in and be like, wait, this might actually be a little bit legit. Maybe I should go buy BlackRock CGF or something, put like a little bit into my portfolio and see what happens. So I want to know what all of your experiences were like. I'll start with you, Norbert. What do you think?
So interesting enough, because I entered the space of like Web3 crypto in 2019, 2020-ish, which was also the almost top of the previous cycle. So it's interesting enough that I've been kind of preaching and talking about it to trying to enter or just trying to participate in any way. So, kind of call that top. I feel like people that's not the first time it picked up mainstream media. But since then, nothing has really changed on my end. So I've been, being pursuing them to like, hey, trying to participate, trying to have something. So what I've been doing is really, really simple. Besides the price action, whenever there's like a bigger event, birthday, whatever that might be, essentially I'm just sending them Bitcoin. Like it sounds weird, sounds funny, but that's my gift really for them to, and I know they're not gonna sell it. um, but honestly, a really easy way for them to kind of accumulate more, but also when they seeing the price action going up and seeing it in mainstream media, that's for them realizing, oh, it actually has some value. And I think the more we see how the dollar is actually getting worthless in regards to inflation and how many issues we're having, they also starting to feel like that, oh, this actually has merit. And like they feeling more interested to do the research. I think what sparks people interest for a first case is most of the people, again, be humans, it's the monetary gains. Like if you see something going up, you got to be more interested in researching and see what it actually does technology wise. And after that, they're gonna stick around regardless once they realize that, oh, this actually makes sense. But I feel like you're gonna have to be really interested in the technology to do the research on your own. So I think even just like sending a little amount and or talking about it, educating them. Because besides now, the mainstream media just picked it up. The easiest way I think that you can spread the word is just like kind of talking about it. Because I think most of us are working in the space. It could be super alien like that, like what are we actually doing in this kind of digital money that doesn't even exist. You can't do much with it. But I think the technology, how the innovation's been happening in the space is just simply unquestionable. So I think just keeping them up to date and just hoping that they will do the kind of due diligence and pushing them towards the right direction. That this is where you want to be at. But what everyone else is thinking, or what are they trying to do? What has been the best kind of practice for you guys?
Yeah, so on my end of things, actually, David, you know what? Why don't you chime in?
Oh no, it's all right. I just I guess like coming from traditional finance, I spent about a decade at JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley, so I was covering macro hedge funds, like all the big macro hedge funds and stuff. It's quite interesting because a lot of people in that space still aren't really involved in Bitcoin. A lot of my old friends, my old colleagues, they still don't really believe in it. They still don't really buy it. They still see the world as a fiat world. So it's always quite interesting when I think both sides are right. I think in a lot of ways it is vaporware, putting on a traditional hat. But you can make anything if you and I bilaterally agree that, hey, I'll give you like a piece of plastic and you give me something, like we can all agree to barter with different things. But so I think they're correct in that sense. Like it could be worth nothing. But on the other hand, the consensus around it, the fact that for whatever reason over 15 years now, you've had organically through word of mouth reached a network that is this big and an asset base that is this big is sensational, I think, in terms of human coordination across the globe. It's a global economy. And Ethereum is also, it's a global economy accessible to anyone with internet. And it's pretty cool that this thing has grown in a decentralized and permissionless way and then evolved outside, the space outside of Bitcoin is the same size as Bitcoin, and there's so many things happening there too. So that's quite an interesting phenomena that is very unique and not easily replicatable. So from that aspect, I think it's, I think there are a lot of OGs that I speak to. They still think the price can go down to like 40K or whatnot, but that's just price. But I think most of the traditional people I speak to in family offices and these kind of places, they have come to accept now that it's not going to go away. It's been 15 years of people calling it a bubble, and it's still here, and the price is higher. So it's hard for traditional finance people to go say, oh, this is a bubble, because it's been 15 years now. That's too long to call it a bubble, even in traditional sense. And then one interesting thing I was looking at actually was if you take the total number of dollars in circulation, just US dollars, I think it's about 20 trillion or something. Right now, actually, that's only like a 10x on Bitcoin because we're a 2 trillion asset. But if you think about it as like what the US did in the 70s when they adopted the gold standard, what they did then was they essentially said, hey, we're going to convert to a gold standard. The nasty thing they did was they were going to tax everyone 90% on their gold holdings, because the price would just go up parabolically once they pegged it to gold. But if that same thing happens to Bitcoin, it goes to 1 million. And you probably don't want to tell anyone that you have any Bitcoin at that point. But yeah, but just another thing that got me really into it was during COVID, because I had some very wealthy friends, and they were saying that actually they're buying Bitcoin now because they couldn't even get access to their gold. So they would always have gold, and then they realized during COVID that they couldn't even travel, they couldn't even get to the countries where the gold was, they couldn't access it. So I was just kind of listening to some of these guys, not really from a tech perspective, because I think the tech is not sexy anymore. Like for people 15 years ago, it was sexy to see that you could send money between each other, and you could send a large amount of money between me and anyone else. But now 2025, there's so many payment rails across the board, so I don't think people come to Bitcoin and go like, wow, this is so cool. But there are other cool things about it, and the culture is way more interesting now.
No, that's a really interesting take, David, and it's interesting to hear how some of your friends kind of still in like the traditional markets are kind of referring to Bitcoin or crypto as a bubble. It's interesting because I definitely hear that a lot as well. And, I'm pretty sure that that's exactly what was said about the internet too, right? But, I mean, we've seen bull run after bull run after bull run take place. And, this is pretty much here to stay. And we're continuing to innovate and technology is advancing. I mean, I just learned about zero knowledge proofs like a couple of months ago, but you know, I don't think we've even seen the tip of the iceberg when it comes to utilizing that technology in this space. So I'm very interested to kind of see that get more widely adopted and see where that takes us, in terms of the technical side of things. So, um, but yeah, what's interesting to me too is that I think people are scared, which is why it's important for us to kind of like keep educating. And I say that people are scared because like we have scams left and right. We have
Yeah.
scams everywhere. Like literally look at insurance companies. Like look at insurance. Like insurance is one giant scam, but guess what? Like we've been gaslighted so much that we have just accepted things at face value. Obviously, some of us don't just accept things at face value. We see it for what it is, but it's ingrained in society. So there's not much we can do, right? But yeah, I think that scams are like just abundant in just traditional markets. And, we've all just kind of been gaslighted to accept things at face value. So I think it's up to people like us who are in this space, who've seen, the benefits of this space and what it's doing for personal sovereignty and so much more, right? Just for, the entire world economically, financially, like as community wise. So it's obviously important for us to just keep moving forward and educating and educating and educating and educating as much as we can. So for me personally, one second, sorry. For me personally, I had my eye on the crypto space back in 2016. But I did not jump in, I would say probably until around like 2018. I think I bought Tron. So random, very, very random. I bought Tron and it basically absolutely destroyed me. I lost so much money. But it's fine. That's the it's the nature of the space. You live and learn. Um, but from there, I became so interested in the space. I became so obsessed and like in love with the space that I started helping out where I could. I was doing a lot of social media and marketing related like efforts during that time. So I started offering my services for free, helping out like different communities that kind of resonated and aligned with me. And then from there, it's like I've kind of like worked myself up to where I am today. And I wouldn't necessarily call myself a Bitcoin maxi, but I am very, very passionate about Bitcoin and what it's doing for the entire, cryptocurrency Web3 space for our community. I say this all the time, where it's like I think what's one of the most beautiful elements about this space is that it's reshaping the meaning of community. We're kind of coming together and co-creating and collaborating and sharing ideas and innovating together. And that's ultimately like the meaning of like that's the meaning of community. That's what we, as human beings, we strive to belong to something that's kind of greater than ourselves, right? And it's kind of beautiful to see that kind of come into fruition in this space, and for it to happen so positively as well. So for me personally, when it comes to, my dog might actually like start barking here, guys, so sorry, just giving you guys a warning in advance. um but basically, like when it comes to like my friends, I'm that annoying friend, guys. I am the annoying friend that doesn't stop talking about crypto and Bitcoin. My partner has to literally tell me to stop. He has to pull me aside to be like, hey, like calm it down a little bit, calm it down, because not everybody's gonna understand. So I've had to definitely tone it down, because I understand that if you just come at people face value and like, hey, crypto, Bitcoin, this is what it's doing, this is the benefits, people are gonna like if people are going to be like kind of like turned away from it. So I've had to like kind of relax there and just stop shilling. But quietly here and there, people are seeing that my life is like a little bit different, right, than theirs. My Web2 friends, I would have to say, are struggling. They are very much struggling, and they're seeing that my life is kind of shifting towards a different path, and they're kind of picking up on that. And that's kind of like giving them the incentive to kind of now look at things and be like, oh, like ask me questions like, oh, tell me more about Bitcoin, tell me more about crypto, you know, or they're doing their own research and coming to me and just having conversations. So definitely from back in like 2018, the whole narrative then was like, oh, crypto's a scam, Web3 is a scam, Bitcoin's a scam, like I don't even want to hear about it. But now that sentiment has 100% shifted. People are more open to it. People come to me and try to talk about it. And you know, all I can do on my end is just educate. I always just take this like educational stance, and you know, just try to kind of guide them towards like them creating their own path, right? So, because obviously the space can also be like very overwhelming. Like you first come into the space. I remember coming in the space and I'm like, oh my fucking God, this is hard, man. What is a DAO? Like what governance models? Like layer one, layer two, like it was too much for my brain. But, you know, so eventually that narrative kind of flipped, right? I feel like anybody who comes into the space is kind of like really eager to learn. And I always like try to take this like approach of like being a sponge and trying to learn all the hard and complex and difficult things because that really helped my brain grow. So I try to do the same with my friends too, as I try to take this educational stance and teach them about like different you know, different like cryptography methods, for example, or different security methods. I really try to take this educational stance because that's typically how I see it getting adopted in like my inner circle. But we do have some people who are raising their hand up. So I would love for them to come and speak. So I think it was James is coming on as a speaker right now. So hello, James. Welcome, welcome. If you'd like to contribute, the mic is yours, my friend. James, the mic is yours if you'd like to speak. Just letting you know.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much. I literally don't have much to say, right? It's just the topic that attracted me, Bitcoin and how you can help Bitcoin. Me, as for myself, the only way I can help Bitcoin right now, I don't even know if Bitcoin needs help, but the only way I can help Bitcoin like getting a bag, right? Yeah, getting a bag and holding to 2027, 2030, right? So yeah, I don't have much to say. Big shout outs to you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. We appreciate you just coming up and just being bullish on Bitcoin. We love to see that. So Um, we have like another couple speakers over here, so let's wait for them to come up. Okay, I think your name is Gabrielle, right?
Right, sorry, but I see Bitcoin OS. Please, it's not actually my first time coming across this project, but I've not really looked into it. I don't know. The space is not for Bitcoin OS, right? It's not. I would have liked to know a little bit about the project.
Well, who would who wants to take the reins on that? Andrew? Andrew's the best. Andrew is just he's in like in a flow state when he explains things. So if you want to take the reins of that, Andrew, please do so.
Yeah, sure. So, Bitcoin OS is a project aiming to unite the entire crypto space around Bitcoin. And the technology it's using to do this is zero knowledge cryptography, which is something that was always theorized about, but which was never really possible or seen as possible on Bitcoin until roughly October 2023, when a lot of advancements around this started to be discovered. And so Bitcoin OS has been leading a race in terms of building zero knowledge tech on Bitcoin to allow it to connect trustlessly to other blockchains so that it can interact with those other chains and unite with them. So what does that mean? What that means is, for the first time, Bitcoiners will be able to leverage the applications, including scalability, privacy, and DeFi, across all of the other crypto ecosystems by plugging into Bitcoin using Bitcoin OS. So you can think of what's a good analogy? You can think of Bitcoin OS as like the power bar, or like an extension cord or something for Bitcoin, where other chains can like plug into the power bar, and then the power bar comes and plugs into Bitcoin, and now everybody can get access. It's mutually beneficial both ways, and so the crypto ecosystem can get access to Bitcoin's massive capital base and this gigantic TVL that they weren't normally familiar with. But then Bitcoin and Bitcoin holders, which take up the vast majority of the crypto space, they can get access to those advanced services that Bitcoin never initially had access to, like DeFi, like lending, and like borrowing. And the beauty of something like Bitcoin OS is that it takes this very, very fragmented crypto space that doesn't really know where to build, and it doesn't really know where to like push adoption, and it allows it to come back to focusing on serving Bitcoin and Bitcoiners so that everybody can unite around one cohesive movement. Because for all of the internal warfare that's happened with crypto between like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Cardano, and Solana, and all of the other chains, the real enemy here has always been TradFi and central banking and like centralized world government control, if you will. And if we can all unite behind the one chain that initially started all of this and the one credibly neutral protocol, which the entire crypto space agrees on, and they can actually effectively build on it by connecting to it with other environments that are more flexible, then that creates a huge window of opportunity to actually push Bitcoin adoption in a truly decentralized way. And so Bitcoin OS is that little connector. It's like it's that little bit more that Bitcoin needs to be able to plug in with all of the other chains so that we can essentially infinitely upgrade it. And so one way to think of Bitcoin OS is it's like the ultimate upgrade to Bitcoin. It lets you just build on Bitcoin in truly trustless layers.
Wow.
I want to
That
just
was
clap.
amazingly
Boom, boom,
said.
boom.
Yes. Big clap to you right there. Yeah, I also like to use kind of like an island analogy as well. So Bitcoin is basically like a deserted island, but it has like a lot of like gold on it, right? So it's kind of like what Bitcoin is, right? It's been sitting dormant with $1.9 trillion dollars. Like just that's it. It's just this asset base. It's this simply just a store of value. But now this island, it now has this bridge on it that connects to all these other islands. And now the people, or yeah, the people can come from this island to the Bitcoin island and they can start building on that island. We can now know what's happening on other islands, right? The Bitcoin island can now know what's happening on other islands. And we can also communicate with these other islands. So Bitcoin OS is an extension network of Bitcoin, basically. And the beautiful element that kind of ties all of this in, kind of like what Yago says, is now this asset base that's been sitting dormant, this 1.9 T that's kind of been sitting dormant, can now seamlessly and beautifully flow into the entire, Web3 crypto ecosystem as a result of our operating system. So so yeah, I just wanted to like touch base on that. But James, yes, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you so much, right? Thank you so much, Andrew. Like that was literally the best, description and explanation you could ever give, right? So thank you so much also Bitcoin OS. So if I understand you clearly, like yeah, Bitcoin OS is like well, I say a layer whereby other projects can now build on the Bitcoin ecosystem, right? Yeah. So just to how everybody knows that the fees on Bitcoin are kind of high. So how's the fees like actually the fees on Bitcoin OS? How is it like?
Well, I'd appreciate maybe if David could speak on this because he's a little bit more technically minded on this than I am. But one thing I can tell you is that with Bitcoin OS, in order to connect other blockchains and all of the activity that happens on them to Bitcoin, it involves writing and verifying a ZK proof on Bitcoin. And in reality, the on-chain footprint of being able to do this is very small. And a lot of the technical advancements that Bitcoin OS has been making makes the on-chain footprint smaller and smaller and smaller, almost infinitesimally small. And so with Bitcoin OS, it's not really about any fees that Bitcoin OS as the middleware might be adding to the system, but the fees involved, if anything, would be incurred on the chains where you bridged your Bitcoin to that are connecting to Bitcoin OS. For example, one chain that will be connecting to Bitcoin through Bitcoin OS would be Cardano. And so if you bridged your Bitcoin, trustlessly bridged your Bitcoin over to Cardano, the fees incurred would depend on the congestion of the Cardano blockchain rather than the Bitcoin chain. Or if you've plugged into Bitcoin via Iona Network, which is a Bitcoin L2 that's based on Solana VM, your fees incurred would depend on the congestion of the Iona network. And Iona is like an extremely scalable blockchain. It uses Solana's technology in order to achieve that. And so depending on the chain you use, when connecting to Bitcoin OS, that's what's going to determine the fees that you incur. And some of the chains that are connecting to Bitcoin already are extremely scalable. They're going to have like Solana-like scalability and then some. But I'd appreciate if David maybe could chime in on that if he's still around.
Yeah, no, I don't think we need to overcomplicate it much more than that. But you, like Andrew said, you have the fees that the blockchains themselves charge for different transactions and operations, and that's not really related to BOS. The economics of what the BOS nodes or the BOS system will be doing will require some kind of fees, but the important thing for people to understand is that those fees are not Bitcoin fees. They're not fees linked to Bitcoin or not fees linked to the other chains, but those are fees that can become incredibly low and incredibly cheap based on the architecture that we run it on. And also it's a question of who pays those fees and how they're paid, and that's all more like design choices rather than technology, I would say. So it's not something that we can essentially say now. But if you were to use a normal bridge today, you would typically pay some kind of transaction fee. And that's the cost side. But there's also, as always with crypto, there's always a cost side, but there's also a revenue side where the usage of the system itself in crypto always has this flywheel back to the token itself. It tends to, with more usage, tends to generate more revenue, and the revenue gets used to gets given back to the community in a lot of ways. So there is a balance to get right.
Thank you, David. Appreciate the explanation there. And James, did you have something to say? Because I do want to give the other speakers a chance to ask questions.
All right, yes, thank you so much. Like, this is so impromptu, but I'm so sorry the way it's coming, but I just want to leverage the opportunity that I have, right? So my last question is, like I heard Andy talking about the chains to seamlessly bridge to. I want to know, like, how many chains like are currently available, to bridge within the Bitcoin OS. That's my last question. I will not ask any other thing again.
Currently, we are still in the process of finalizing the code and the technology, but we're very close to that point. And when you're building in crypto, actually, you might have 100 different types of chains, but you really only have a couple of different what we call virtual machines. So EVM, for example, is the biggest virtual machine. Within that, you'll have hundreds of chains. So once you build for a certain VM, in this case EVM, to begin with, that already entails chains like Ethereum, Arbitrum, Mode, Binance Smart Chain, Polygon, Avalanche. All these are Ethereum smart chains. And if we make an integration to Solana VM, SVM, then you get all these, like Andrew mentioned, Una, Solana, Zeus, all these type of ecosystems. So there's actually some scale to the development here. Or if you do one integration with UTXO, etc., you can do one type of build, and then you've almost done 90% of the job.
Thank you so much for
Thank
that,
you.
David.
Thank
And sorry guys, if you do want to speak, please do raise your hand up. I think Joe, you were here first. If you do want to chime in, feel free. The mic is yours.
Hey, thank you very much. So you guys answered some of my questions, especially, well, actually, I'll revert straight to my point. So we have this dilemma in Bitcoin and most of crypto in terms of the capital value, which is, and I will use this specific word for a reason, trapped inside of crypto, only becomes realized when you sell it, stake it, find some kind of liquidity solution. So it's just a very direct question. I assume that Bitcoin OS has got some kind of plan for a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin, which would purely exist on the Bitcoin OS system and integrate with BTC.
Yeah, Go ahead, David. Go ahead.
It's a good question. The reason I'm not saying we won't do it, but that to me, I'm not okay. So what I would say is I would phrase it like this, Joe. Okay, so anyone I think can create a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin, and this might be a little bit technical financially, but Bitcoin is the collateral. You mint stable coins against it with some kind of ratio, and then you manage the collateral. So I don't think that's the technological bridge. What I think is the technological bridge, and this is going to get slightly technical, is that most of the Bitcoins that exist outside of Bitcoin today have a security assumption that could potentially mean in certain scenarios they're worth 0. It means that the Bitcoins that you have on Ethereum, like WBTC, can be stolen, which means that the DeFi protocols that are holding it could see their collateral go to 0 instantly. What you have with Bitcoin OS is a type of Bitcoin where the probability of that happening, or the security assumption of that Bitcoin, is orders of magnitude larger or stronger. And I'm talking orders of magnitude of 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times stronger in terms of security. If the system is designed the way we envision it, then your Bitcoin collateral cannot become insolvent. It cannot become 0. For you to compromise our bridge, you would have to take over the whole network, every single node. That is very difficult.
So I assume that Bitcoin OS has a distribution strategy for those nodes where it can become as decentralized as possible.
Yes.
To reduce that risk.
Yeah.
So I understand obviously the issue with current wrap tokens, and I mean BTC, which exists on another chain, is not really BTC at all, because the whole purpose of BTC is trustlessness, to trust the message, not the messenger, which you have like a whole all layer 2s in the crypto ecosystem, as far as I'm aware, and this is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is where ZK proofs come in, are basically relying on the batching of transactions, which are then being verified into a single transaction, batched together into a single transaction, which is then getting its consensus from the underlying chain. So are you saying that Bitcoin OS technology solves that issue to enable effectively batching of transactions, with like a bridged version of Bitcoin on the OS system without trusting any intermediaries?
I think we're mixing concepts together, but the bridge itself, think of it as a vault where you store your Bitcoin and you get this Bitcoin on other chains. It's just a vault, a bank that stores your Bitcoin. That will provide a type of Bitcoin that is much more secure than the wrap Bitcoin. Now, for the other part of these layer 2s, can we batch their transactions and wrap them into ZK proof and bring them back to verify on Bitcoin actually, and not the way they're doing it today, which is they're using their own verifiers that they've set up, their own node network. So it's very much permissioned. As such, that's something we're working on, yes.
Well, that's fantastic, and I wish you guys all the best of luck. I have to drop off the call, but I will be watching very closely and supporting you guys everywhere I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, man. Please reach out.
Thank you so much, Joe. Those were great questions. I think the next person who had their hand up was it Mr. CJ? I mean, okay, yeah. All right, let's go with Mr. CJ, and then we honestly probably have time for maybe like one more question, because we're going to be wrapping up here. Mr. CJ,
Okay, thank you.
hello.
I'm not sure if it was me, but yeah, I can go. Okay. Good day, everybody. GM Alien. I see some familiar people I know. Ambrose, Senate, DeFi producer. Some people I've seen before. Spoon. Andrew, I've followed you. Norbert. Yeah, a couple of other people, especially people with Bitcoin OS on their profile. I follow them immediately. But anyways, so the question or the topic: how can you help how can you help Bitcoin? The question should be: does Bitcoin really need our help? I don't think Bitcoin needs help. I mean, it's centralized, it's self-sustaining. It's exactly the way it was designed by Satoshi. God bless his heart anywhere he is. So basically, I think if strictly or maybe more flexibly talking about helping Bitcoin could be maybe trying to do what Elian has said before now she was doing, like trying to educate people to understand and be able to know how to use Bitcoin, contributing, promoting adoption, building tools, like what Bitcoin OS is doing, for example, to be able to make Bitcoin more, I don't want to use flexible, more usable, and uh, more to strengthen it more. I mean, like if we can get something that is stronger than what wrapped Bitcoin is doing at the moment, moving it even back to centralization, which is almost ironically opposite to what Satoshi envisaged. So that could be the part of I'm building partnerships as well, but be very careful not to. I mean, because this thing of needing help or not needing help uh, led to a lot of people when there was discussions around ETF and all of that and SEC, thinking that maybe ETF. Yeah, there are positives to that, but I don't. I still believe that Bitcoin doesn't really need an ETF to be what Bitcoin is, but it can help. It can help with adoption and all of that. So yeah, I think that's briefly what I believe. So basically, if we if we spread in these actions, strengthen the utility, like I said, what Bitcoin OS is doing at the moment, then I'm here for the ride. I think Bitcoin should be fine and will be fine and be more entertaining. So basically, yeah, to cut the story short, I don't really think Bitcoin needs help. It's actually humans that need help, especially from the government and some big establishments. Yeah, so yeah, that's my submission. Thank you, Alan, for the opportunity.
Thank you for chiming in on that, Mr. CJ. And I actually, there's a part of me which resonates with a lot of what you just said. There is a piece of my heart that can't help but think that Bitcoin is kind of inevitable already, and that it's still got a long way to go ahead of it, just as it is, and it's kind of really hard to take down. Um, on the other hand, though, the question I think of whether Bitcoin needs our help it depends on what you think Bitcoin's end game should be or what role it should serve. So, if you believe that Bitcoin's ultimate role is to be a sovereign store of value that nobody can take away from you and that never ever changes on you, and that will be there for you in 10,000 years when your great grandkids wake up and then they can inherit that capital, then yeah, I'd say Bitcoin is already doing that job really well. It's going to be excellent for that. And already it's got this huge utility. That being said, for other use cases, say just a slight extension of that which would be to turn Bitcoin into a currency, a medium of exchange that the entire world can use in a peer-to-peer manner that nobody can take away from them. Bitcoin it's not quite at that point yet to be able to do that. And so if you're trying to get Bitcoin to that point, which it can, which would make it even more valuable and even more helpful for people, it's up to humans to build the technology on top of it, like going forward today, even in like 15 years, 16 years after Bitcoin's gone live, it's up to us to go and build that technology. And so Boss has made it part of its mission to give developers the freedom to build that technology and to build it in layers on top of Bitcoin. And that makes me incredibly optimistic. But it really depends on what your goal for your Bitcoin is. And some people are going to be fine to just keep their Bitcoin as a store of value. I certainly have done that. I've kept my Bitcoin as a store of value for many, many years. And I don't intend on, I'm hesitant to use it completely as a medium of exchange because I want to hold it because I think it's going to go up so much more over time. But as it grows more in adoption, there will come the time when we want to spend some of our Bitcoin and do things with it, or maybe earn a yield on it. And building that technology in whatever form it comes, that's going to be very useful to people. So I would say, depends on your perspective.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I agree with one thing with human beings, and this always comes in the arguments of population growth or depopulation is human beings will always be innovative. So if you take something that is already beautiful and human beings would try to make it even more beautiful, we don't have much to lose in that case. So if we can, through any means, boss any other people that comes to even make what is already beautiful, Bitcoin, and try to extend it to more usabilities. I mean, who am I to say no to that? It's something that is acceptable. It's something that everybody, especially in this space, would love. And yeah, well, yeah, I would always.
I think it really depends on what usability, because I have been in this crypto space outside of Bitcoin a lot as well with the fund that I have, Kryptonite Capital, and outside of and then now coming back to build on Bitcoin, the two fucking worlds are completely different. Outside of Bitcoin, because programmability is so cheap, it's a jungle, because you can build any type of contract, you can do anything, there's so many more scams and these kind of things outside of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is so difficult to build on and it's so slow that you can't create things that can scam people. So it kind of self-protects itself. And then outside of Bitcoin is a fucking jungle, you know? But the use case that we are looking for specifically, and the Bitcoin that Alien has been mentioning, that is sitting there doing nothing, that's most likely people that have held for a long time. They're not looking to swap those Bitcoins into something else to speculate, because they would have done that already. So the primary use case is for that Bitcoin to start earning some kind of yield for you. And in crypto, the source of that income, just like what you get in your bank account, there are so many sources that can generate yield without you losing your BTC. And that's the big opportunity, to connect that kind of income money, the fixed income money, the stuff that, maybe you can earn 5, 6, 10% a year on your Bitcoin just sitting there. That's the big opportunity. And when you combine those interest rates, 5 to 10%, with $2 trillion of assets, that's $200 billion a year in interest income, just when you do the math like that. So it's not every use case. It's not meme coins. It's not scamming people on pump.fun and this stuff. And I don't think the people that have their Bitcoin and have held it for 10 years want to engage in that, but they will want to get some kind of yield on their Bitcoin. And they want to do it in the most secure way, where they feel like these Bitcoins that they have engaged in the system cannot be lost, which is why we're building this very, very secure bridge technology and vault technology.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate that. And Mr. CJ, so awesome to see you here, my friend. It's always nice to chat with you and talk about all things Web3, crypto. Gallows Field, Abomac producer, I see that you guys have requested, and I'm so sorry to say that unfortunately we're kind of like wrapping up here, which is why I haven't approved you guys as a speaker, but we will be hosting more of these spaces, hopefully about 2 times a week. This conversation was awesome, and it was nice just chatting to everyone and getting to know everybody a little bit better. So please, we would absolutely love to have you guys on the next space. Just to hear you guys like chat and contribute to the conversation. And yes, I'm so sorry. I see you guys sending sad faces and stuff, but yeah, unfortunately we're wrapping up. So Guys, thank you so much for joining. And I just want to give a big shout out to everybody that's here. Mr. CJ, thank you for speaking. Jason, Web3 Ambrose, Abomac producer John Spoon, Zenith, Gideon, my Decentralized Community Alliance family is here. So nice to see you guys. The Traveler, The Mass, Ninja, Jerry, Chimboyem. So sorry, I butchered that. I think Ola, Crypto, Ada, Telucidian, DeFi producer David Young Linto, MZTA, Zabbage, I'm so sorry about that. Ridwan, Spice, Shwana, Web3 Wizard, Hermosa, Shady Patty, Spice. So good to see you guys here. Ridwan, so good to see you guys here. And genuinely, thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And again, the entire, mindset and goal we have with this is just, once again, to just allow us to be empowered through knowledge, which is freedom, right? So we plan on hosting these, 1 to 2 times a week, and we'd absolutely love to see you guys at the next one. Please don't be shy, and would love to have you guys come up and just, speak, give us your 2 cents, share your advice, share your tips, anything and everything. This is kind of like an open mic type situation where we just, yeah, we're just harboring all different kinds of conversations. So thank you all so much. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week. And I hope it's bullish in every single way in your love life, your personal life, your financial life. I wish you guys all the best, my friends, and take care. Thank you for being here.
Have a great rest of your week, guys. Stay boss.
Take care, everyone.